right, we are on.
All right, so we are here with Dave Claxton. Dave just very recently became the head referee. Is that the correct title?
I think so. I don't even know.
You get an official badge or something.
Yeah. Like I'll say this, like as far as Deka goes, I'm not an employee. I'm like a contractor.
Cool.
So I'm kind of head referee for the event. So yeah, it's and I'm not one to really care about titles anyway.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so new head referee. They never had one before officially, I don't think, for DekaFit. So first question, I'm glad you mentioned what you just did. How did you end up getting that role? How'd that work out?
Simply put, I pestered Yancey enough when I thought things went wrong, and I talked a lot of crap, and now I have to live up to it, I guess. Yeah, quite literally, there was some issues at one event, and as many times I'd been a bit of a sounding board for Yancey, and sometimes, when I saw stuff that I didn't agree with or didn't like, I would say, hey, I like, I was respectful, but I would just say, hey, I think maybe this could have been done differently or such and such. And Yancey agreed and thought he had realistically too much on his plate when he's at these events and needed to share the load a little bit. So when I, shoved my foot in the door, he said, well, I'm going to hold you to it. Let's see what you can do.
Hey, that's great. Nothing wrong with that.
Way to go. So pretty much he said, back it up.
Yeah. Put your money where your mouth is, dumbass. That kind of thing.
I'm sure that's going to be fun for you, though.
Yeah, well, I was down, we did our first event in Ocala, which seems to be the place they're continually going. So had the first event down in Ocala before, and other than one incident, it all went quite well.
Cool. I don't know what the incident is, so I'm not going to make you bring it up.
All right.
So my first question, and this is probably what prompted us asking you to hop on here, is the rule changes that came out for starting now, right? And they do go for the World Championship, and the first one regarding the lunges for Zone 1. The verbiage in the rule book has changed over time. I thought what just came out was very similar to what was there before. So I'm not really sure exactly what the difference is. Do you mind briefly explaining what that is? And then explaining how this is easier to judge compared to what was there before?
Yeah, okay. So before, basically on the lunges, the wording was they wanted to see full extension through the knees, but it didn't say anything about full extension through the hips. It basically said standing tall, which became very vague and left open to interpretation. So what we started seeing was a lot of people basically driving their butt backwards, bending over at the waist, and doing like a flick of the knees. So they were extending their knees as per the rule. And as there was no real guidance as to what standing tall was, you couldn't really say it's a no rep because it was too vague. So the motivation behind it was, and I mean, you guys train people, you're never going to bring someone into your gym and say, this is how I think you should do lunges. And if you do, I mean, I'm probably going to hire a different coach. It just isn't, that's not the way we're going to help. So we wanted it to be more safe, better ergonomically. So we wanted people more upright for their own benefit. So the big change in the wording is adding the phrase of drawing a straight line from the ankles through the knees, through the hips to the shoulders. And that brings people more upright. So it stops that big lean over.
So
okay. So Luke, did you have something?
I mean, technically that would mean a perfectly straight line, though, right? If it's ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, that's locked down, right?
Yes and no. So where there's a little bit of room to play there is, like, let's be honest, your hips, your shoulders, even your knees to a certain extent, these are beefy areas. There's a lot of space there. So that line can move a bit. And that gives a little bit of room for the athletes to a little bit of room for error for the athletes, and also a little bit of room for error for the judges. But the question, and I think this is probably the initial question where you're going with this, why didn't we go with pure lockout? Right?
Mm-hmm. So actually, funny enough, my question has always been for Zone 1, why they ever cared about lockout, because it is so difficult to judge, and because there's so much discrepancy with judging it, because it depends on like what the person's wearing. Sometimes it depends on who's doing the judging, and like body shapes, even sometimes like it may look like they are not and they are, or they are and they're not. So I always wondered why it wasn't just like step back, like keep the torso upright, but step back behind the line. Don't worry about knee or hip extensions coming up, as long as your feet cross the line and your upper body's upright. So why hasn't that been the change? Because that would make it very easy to judge.
Yeah, and I think that they did, and this is pre me. And again, I don't. So here's the thing too. I don't make the rule changes. I do have a voice in it, but I don't get the final say. Being like I said, I'm more of a contractor. So, but from my understanding is previously when they had to decide a direction to go, it was kind of, you could have went to that full like let the jump, pretty much what you described, right? And it would be faster, and you wouldn't have to worry about judging that knee extension, and it would be easier to judge. So they had to decide, do we want to let the horses out and almost go to the point of the jump lunge thing, or do we want to get people more upright? And they decided that they wanted to go the way of getting people more upright. So I do know that was entertained greatly, and there was a lot of back and forth over which is the way to go. So it's a valid point, and that's just the way they decided they wanted to take it.
Gotcha.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so then for the next question, and then we'll stick with form on this. So zone 10, the ram burpees, it used to be that when you brought the ram overhead, there just had to be visible space between your head and the ram had to be over your head. Now this year, it's been full lockout overhead, elbows at full lockout, full extension over top, and hips extended, correct?
Yeah, and again, it was never worded as full lockout. They went with that extension.
Right. So then what, if you know, why was that change made? Because that is harder to judge, and a lot of people don't do it even if they think they're doing it. And a lot of people have done it and not been no repped for it. Like, why was that changed versus what it used to be?
All right, so the why is pretty simple. Watch Worlds 2023 and watch the burpees at the end, and it just was to the point where it was like, visually, this is not what was wanted. This was not when Deka was made. This is not what was hoped to be seen. And they went with the whole just bring the ram over the head because they were thinking easy to judge.
Right.
But as athletes, as we cut every corner possible and make things, we do what we can to stay within the rules, but maximize our efficiency for speed.
For sure.
Yeah. And it was getting just really kind of bad and ugly. So that's when they decided, okay, let's make it so that we need to have full extension over the head. And then the little bit of rewording this time was we just added that same wording about the line so that people can visualize what we anticipate or what we expect as full extension rather than complete lockout. And especially on the ram burpees, like I'm sure you've run into people a lot where they can't even lock out their elbows at all overhead.
Right.
And that's the main reason why we didn't go with full lockout on that.
So sorry, just to clarify, because I was a little confused on that. You do or you do not have to lock out your elbows.
It's not lockout. It's the same thing. Now, I had this question online where it's like, they say, well, I can be, have my line through my ankles, knees, and hips, shoulders, elbows, hands, and be bent like this.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's true. But that line also comes from the front. So you're still going to need that straight line through your shoulder to your elbow to your hand.
Okay. So, okay. So the elbow can be a little bit bent. I'm just trying to clarify.
Here's the thing.
Out personally, because the momentum just like carries your arms up. If you stop sooner than that, then you're putting in more effort anyway.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And the only reason for not putting the lockout in is just because we all know Deka is designed for everybody from the high end elites to the very, very beginners. And some people just can't do it. They just don't have that. I mean, I think of Rebecca Fuselier from CrossFit. She got all sorts of flack in the open this year. She's a high level CrossFitter, been to the games, and she can't lock out her elbows from gymnastic injuries.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the reasoning behind not going with the lockout phrase there.
Got it.
But I totally agree with you. And this is something that I will be telling athletes too, because I'll be doing a live stream night before Worlds. And even in our pre-race speeches where, like I did in Ocala, where I tell them, you don't have to fully lock out, but I think you're crazy not to if you're capable of it. Because you're risking like 5/100ths of a second, you know, like from the difference from almost lockout to lockout, right? You're maybe a 1/10 of a second, 5/100ths of a second, and you're going to risk a no rep for that, especially on a burpee that's going to take you 3 seconds. That's just bad gambling. So if you don't go all the way, you're leaving it in the judge's hands.
Yep.
And that's your call. So if the judge gives you a no rep for it, and you know, that's on you.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you mentioned you're going to do that video, and you're going to talk to athletes about this. Aside from, like, are you all planning to send out an email announcement with the updates to all the World Championship competitors? Because as far as I know, it was only the one Instagram video on like obstacle or hybrid racing media, and then I think Yankee put out a video also, but it's not been a lot of content so far.
No, and I will be perfectly frank with you. I don't know. That's not my realm. I hope they do.
Right.
I know, regardless of what they do, I intend to make in the future. I intend to make some judging aid videos. So some videos for the affiliates and the judges that they have come on, so that they can all see what, at least from my perspective, as the head judge, is an expectation that they should uphold. So that is the plan for that. So I'm hoping that whether I do that or Deka sends that out, I hope the communication becomes better as far as that goes.
Now, have you like, how are you picking the judges this year? Or I guess, are you picking certain judges for the elite? Because Yancey mentioned something like that, like potentially having 8 of the 15 judges being paid judges and the other 7 maybe not, or something like that. He mentioned that in a podcast a long time ago, but I don't know if that's even relevant anymore. But is there any process that you're using to choose the judges, or is it just certain athletes who you know you can trust, or how are you doing that for Worlds this year?
So for Worlds, the plan is to essentially, and you guys know this is as well as everywhere else, every hybrid race or OCR, everybody's got the same problem. Gym events, we get what we get as far as judges go, right? So what comes down, and this will be something that does fall on not just myself, but as a good part of myself, is to analyze what we have and to make sure we have the right judges in the right places at the right times. So basically, yes, trusted judges who I know, who I've seen, will definitely be trying to get them in on the elite waves, especially, and in the right positions. Like, for example, I'm not going to take someone who's never judged and put them on the lunges right off the bat, right out of the gate. You know, we're going to maybe have them working on the rower or the skier or the farmer's carry, someplace like that, and take people who we know, who have experience, who have, and I mean, let's be honest, who have the courage to call it as it needs to be called in the positions that they need to be. And yeah. And basically, like, we're changing the narrative, changing the culture for Deka, right? Because we all know it was, here's your 18 warnings. Oh, wait, you're done.
Yeah.
That's correct.
This is not going to be the case at Worlds. This was not the case when I was at Ocala last time. All right. It is basically, you know, when I give you that pre-race speech, that's your warning. You know, no rep is not a dirty word anymore.
Right.
And it's and to the judges out there, when you give somebody a no rep, you're not being a jerk. You're not insulting them. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not hurting their feelings. And if you are hurting their feelings, that's on them, not you. Right? You're calling the event right. And by not calling the event right, you're being unfair to every other athlete competing, not just the one you're judging. So you have to call it properly, and you have to be comfortable with no rep is not a bad thing. It's not the end of the world. It's not an insult.
I like that. That's the right perspective to have here. Yeah, that's perfect.
And like I said, it's a culture change, and it'll it'll take a little time to completely filter down. And I know it's especially down to the gym events, but yeah, like at our gym events, people get no reps.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it goes.
I like it. I like the sound of it. I hope to see it happen, because
I can no rep you right away if you like.
For fair competition.
I give you one now. You're fine. You got to do 20 minutes. We're done.
Okay, so that actually answered another question we had. But then one more question related to that. So will there be the ability, or is there the possibility that there will be video review post-event or penalties for at least the elite competitors?
Yes and no. The only time I will use video review for any competitors is for a safety infraction. There will be no reviewing of form. There'll be no reviewing of that, anything like that. You will not cross the line and I'll go back and watch a video and say, your form sucked. I'm docking you this much time. That's not going to happen.
Okay,
Right.
so that's a bit of a change then, because Spartan / Deka has done that before in the past, so that's a positive change.
Now, so and you didn't ask about it, but this is actually exactly what happened in Ocala last time.
Oh,
And so
really?
we had an incident where, and I mean, it was common knowledge. So Jack Bauer, his judge did not count correctly for his amount of laps on the tank.
I heard about it.
That's right. And so he did not count correctly. This was not brought up right away. The judge did not say it. Was somebody caught it on the video on the live stream. So it wasn't even brought to well after the awards and things like that. And I mean, the opportunity was there to go back and deduct Jack. And some people believe that was the right thing to do, but I had said beforehand, and I stick to it. And I'm backed up by DECA as they allowed me to do it. Is I will not review for video. Just it's not fair to have video review of one person if you can't apply it to everybody. And
Yeah,
you simply
that's true.
can't. And my statement to that was, do we know in hindsight that Jack did not do enough back and forth? Yes, we do. However, I don't know that the guy in fourth did enough either.
Yeah, that's a valid,
True.
good perspective.
Right?
Excuse me.
So if I can't apply the video review to everybody for the same things, then it's not fair to apply it to one person. And in that case, the judges call on the floor stands. Now, if you're received a penalty and you want to appeal that penalty, then we can look at video.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
That sounds fairly reasonable. Nice.
That's what I'm trying for.
Yeah.
Cool.
You've
I'm
got, you've got
Going
a
from
tough
not
job.
idiotic. That's what we're after here.
Not to cut this short, one more question, and then Luke has to go train a client. So for the rule book, so when we did our little poll thing on Instagram, one of the comments that people had that they put out there was like, oh, can we get a rule book that stays around for a year? And I kind of agree with that sentiment because DECA has been around for a few years. DECA is the same event. It hasn't really changed at all, the rep counts, the weights, or anything like that. So in my opinion, there has been several years to iron out the kinks and hundreds of events to iron out the kinks and have the right verbiage, have the right rules in place. What do you think about all that? And like, I know you said you don't have official say in the rule book, but just what do you think about all that?
So I would like, so this is, again, we're talking about what I'd like and to help happen and to hope happen and consider a goal. The first thing is I would like to make sure that if there is any changes to come in the rule book, that it is done at the appropriate time. And that's number one. So that is a personal goal of mine. I'm not saying I can completely accomplish it because again, I don't have carte blanche. I don't have all the control. That's just something that I'm hoping to influence.
Right.
As far as the rule book not changing, and I mean, I'm gonna slightly disagree. One, I believe, yes, it could be more consistent. However, as things evolve, be it technology, be it this, be it everything, there are going to be changes here and there. And there are going to be ways sometimes where athletes find ways to skirt around things. That's what we do. That is our job as athletes, is to find the fastest way possible to make things happen. And sometimes that means things are happening as they weren't intended. And I mean, nobody's rule book stays the same. NFL, NHL, and they're changing the rule books all the bloody time. You know, it's a more complicated sport. It absolutely is.
Yep.
But it also, I mean, the NHL has been around for 100 years. And when I started playing hockey when I was a kid, they're not even using the same amount of skaters anymore. So things change. So I do think it should be more consistent, and I believe it will be. But I would never promise that things won't change. And I don't think you should ever lock that down, because there might come a time where we look back at something and say, this was goofy and wrong. And if we're locked into not changing it just out of what we had said and promised and stuff, then we're not making things right and we're not making things better.
I hear you.
No, that makes sense. And I don't think anyone wants it to stay the same forever, but I think people just want more consistency.
100%. 100%. And I intend to try to make that happen. And I intend, another thing along the consistency that I hear, and I think it might have been on your post or someone else's, but consistency in judging through the main events all the way down to the gym events. And that's why I want to try to help people. And I'll say it right now, if anybody's running an event and they want help with their judges, reach out to me. I'm the easiest dude in the world to get hold of, and let me know, and I'll be glad to help.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. We appreciate you being available to help like that.
No problem. And I do have one more thing to say about the changes that came up. And just so everybody is sure, there was a few other odds and sods on the changes, like the switching of the tank and whatnot and stuff. That is 2025 season. The only thing really that applies here to Worlds is the new lunges. And the only reason
I was going to ask that. I forgot.
The only reason that one applies is just because, again, it is not really a safe ergonomic position. And the last thing that you want is, like, if we said, okay, we know this is wrong, but we let it go at Worlds, and then someone tweaks it back at Worlds, and we're like, son of a bitch, because we knew it should have been fixed, right? So that's the only reason that one applies. And as I talked before about trying to get the changes at the right time. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, just the lunges. Everything else you did when you're qualifying, you're switching on the tank settings for relays, for co-ed relays and whatnot. That's the same for Worlds.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be doing the strong elite individual and then also strong elite co-ed team. So that's gonna be fun, really fast and fun. So
all right, Joel, are you racing?
I am not this year. I'll be working, so yeah, I won't be there.
All right, Slick, I'll give Luke your no rep.
Yeah, please do.
hey, if I deserve it, I'll take it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the
Thank you very much. Sorry we were short on time.
Appreciate it. You're doing good. You're doing good work here.